Hello, everyone. In this reading discussion, we're going to talk about Dear Ijeawele by Adichie. So, when we look at the title of the work, we know that the genre, it's not an essay, but it is a letter. And it's a letter to her friend who just had a child, right? I believe it says the child is only a week old. Okay, so this letter is actually taken from a larger work. It's from one of her books. So you'll notice that the when you look at the headings, right, it starts with third suggestion, then jumps to fifth, and then sixth. So this piece in the textbook, it just took excerpts from her greater work. So that's why the suggestions are they're not going in order from like one to six. Right? So with this letter, she uses the example strategy to show the reader, right, her friend, right, something to explain something that many people feel to be too abstract or general or broad. So if you remember from the lecture slides, one of the reasons we use examples is because we could take something very abstract and make it concrete. So abstract things, again, they're very general, they're broad. When you talk about abstract things, a specific image might not even pop into someone's head. They may not really know specifically what you're talking about. So in this letter, she uses real life, real world examples to help make the concept more concrete. So, what do you think is that abstract thing she's trying to define or explain? If you said feminism, that is correct. She states so in the third paragraph. The paragraph numbers are on the right side of the textbook. And then she also says it in paragraph 19. So she talks about these words like patriarchy, feminism, misogyny, and she talks about how when we use these terms, a lot of people, not only may they not understand them, they might also misunderstand them, or they don't really know what they look like. So throughout the letter, you probably saw that she used a lot of examples. So she organizes her letter by suggestions. So the first suggestion that we come by in the letter is the third one, and the main idea or suggestion is to teach her daughter that gender roles is absolute nonsense. So instead of just telling us that, she shows us with these examples. So one of the first examples she gives, she talks about sweeping, right? She was always told to sweep like a girl, right? To bend down and sweep properly, right? But she wishes that her brothers also were taught the same thing, but they weren't, right? So this is an example of how girls are being taught to do things in a certain way. So you could see this in real life too, when you think about how, let's say, the difference between how men and women sit, right? I think for the most part, most girls growing up, they are taught to sit with their legs closed, maybe ankles crossed, right? Whereas with boys, we don't really do that to them. We don't really tell them, oh, you have to sit this certain way, right? So that's an example that she's trying to give. The other example she goes into is she talks about how she went to go buy her friend's daughter an outfit and she noticed the color differences, right? And so that's her second example for this suggestion. And it's interesting to think about too, because let's say you go to somewhere like Macy's or Ross, you do notice that there are certain colors for girls and certain colors for boys, right? So for girls, maybe you mostly see pink, soft pastels. For boys, you'll probably see brown, blue, black, right? And then she also talks about toys. So her other example are the toys that we see for girls and for boys. She says boys get more active toys. So things like trains, Tonka trucks, and then girls, they get more passive toys like dolls, right? So that's her other example. And then she brings up another example of something she observed, which was she saw a 7-year-old girl who asked her mom, is it only dolls I'll play with, right? And so that's her other example. And then she brings up another example too about how when we look at how parents interact with their children, most parents might tell their daughters, be nice, don't touch that, you got to act a certain way, whereas maybe boys, they're given less rules, right? So it's kind of interesting to think about. Growing up, I would say that I was given more rules compared to my brother. in terms of how I was going to act or behave in public places, things I could do, people I could see, right? So, something interesting to think about. So, for the sixth suggestion, she talks about language. So, the main idea with this suggestion is that she's trying to say that language is the repository of our prejudices. And she says this in paragraph 17. So, what does that mean? A repository is like a container, right? So, she's saying language is the container in which our prejudices go. And how does she show us this? Well, she gives us an example. So she says, we call little girls and little boys different things. So for little girls, we might say, oh, my sweet little princess, right? And when you think about it for boys, what do we usually call them? We might say, oh, that's my little rock star, that's my champ, right? Or that's my bud, right? So that's her first example to kind of explain this. And she goes into other examples too. She talks about this equation, right, in paragraph 20. So she says if you criticize a certain quality in women, but you don't in men, then it might be that you just have a problem with women. So let's see if this works. Okay, so let's take one of her examples here. She talks about loudness. So do we criticize loudness in women? What do you think? And then think about whether or not we criticize loudness in men. So if you say, yes, we criticize loudness in women, but we don't really criticize it in men, then it could be that, right, there's just a problem with women. So that is the third example that she goes into. So she's taking these abstract concepts, right, like feminism or what it means to be misogynistic, and then she tries to make it concrete with examples. Because she says so herself that many people, they don't really know what that means, right? So we have a great example here in this letter of how you can take something abstract and you make it concrete with those examples. So why do her examples work? So what makes them effective? So first, they're very authentic. Some of them are personal experiences. They're specific and detailed. They're often relatable. So they're relatable in the sense that most of us who read it, we kind of grew up hearing similar messages and we can kind of apply them to themselves. So, for example, having more rules growing up as a girl, right? That's something I personally found relatable. Also, when I go and I buy something for my friend's baby shower, right? If I don't know the gender, I'll try to get like yellow. But if I know the gender, if it's a boy, let's say, I'll try to get blue, right? If it's a girl, I'll try to get pink. So these examples are relatable in that sense. Okay, and they all connect to that larger point she's trying to make, that in raising this feminist child, because that's what her friend asked her for, right? Advice on how to raise her child feminist. It's kind of it's about rethinking sort of things that we do and think. So here's a great example of how to use examples, right? Again, going back to the lesson that you probably watched already for the example strategy, right? The same concepts or qualities apply here. Her examples are specific, relatable, detailed, concrete, right? So that's what you want to go for with your examples. So going into the assignment that follows this, which is the discussion forum, where I'm asking you to pretend that you two are writing a letter to a friend who is a future parent. So what I want you to do is write a series example. So it's just one paragraph. So series example, use at least three examples, one sentence each for this series example, but illustrating just one quality or one principle of what makes a good parent. So with Adichie's letter, she's trying to explain feminism. Maybe in your letter, you are trying to talk about how trustworthiness makes a great parent. Right? So give us three specific examples of what makes a parent trustworthy. Right? Because it's not enough just to tell your reader, oh yeah, trustworthy parents do this and that, but give us a specific example. What would they specifically be doing to show their child that they are trustworthy? So I hope this helps. If not, just send me an email. I can help you with that assignment. Just let me know.